Shalom Aleichem, dear friends. Welcome to this session of Hebrew School. Today we will, for the grammar part of our lesson, I think we will be wrapping up our use of the four-page study guide, and I will explain to you why that is in a few minutes when we get started here. Oh, I wanted to show you that I'm wearing my Hebrew University t-shirt because I have taken some Hebrew classes online from Hebrew University, and that was a lot of fun. So I got a t-shirt to kind of advertise that. So let's go ahead and get started with our grammar lesson. And once again, I will pull up this page of our four-page study guide. This is one of the inside sections. There are 2 pages inside that you have to turn them sideways. And the whole inside 2 pages have to do with verbs. And the last time for our last lesson, we talked about Hebrew verb conjugations, perfects and imperfects. This is one of the most important things to learn because the perfect is the completed action, and that usually places it in the past. Then we have the imperfect, which is a continuing action. And because it's a continuous action, it's ongoing, so it can be past, present, or future. Oftentimes, like the main interpretation of that is a future one. But I emphasized last time that the best way to determine the tense of the verb, past, present, or future, is from the context, because one of the things that I'll point out to you today will show you why it's really difficult to determine tense, and even whether or not it's a completed action or an ongoing action, just based on the form of the word. So we went through the perfects, the imperfects, the imperatives, which is the command. We also talked about the various kinds of infinitives, infinitive constructs and infinitive absolutes. And those communicate the idea of to do something, to walk, to swim, to teach, etc. And then we have the participle, which in English comes across as having an ing suffix. So it's like swimming and walking and teaching. So we talked about those ideas, and it'll be handy for you to kind of remember what those various conjugations mean. Today we will be looking at Hebrew verb stems, and we will look at these 6 that are given to us here. I think it's interesting that the kal verb stem, kal is a Hebrew word that means simple or basic, is not listed here. So I'm telling you now that the kal, I would put it as number 1 and move nifal down. The kal stem, the basic verb stem, is just the most simplistic, most basic form of the verb. So I don't know why the kal wasn't included here in, I think in all the grammar books that I've ever used, the kal is listed among the verb stems. So we'll set that straight today. We will be looking at these 6 and kind of explaining what they are, but we won't be spending a lot of time on it. And if you look at those 2 inside pages, I mean, look at this at the bottom of column 2 and the whole of column 3. It is just paradigm after paradigm, chart after chart. And if you would look at that and think I'm supposed to know what is on those charts, you would really get bogged down and probably very discouraged and give up. So I'm going to tell you that these paradigms don't matter much. I will give a little bit of an explanation on the kal paradigm, the simple paradigm, and point out a few things. But I'm going to say these really don't matter for a couple of reasons. One is, and I'm just going to tell a story of when I was going through seminary, my Hebrew professor invited a friend of his who was Jewish and had been raised in a Jewish family, invited him to come to class, and we talked about Hebrew. Now, this guy, being raised in a Jewish family, went to Hebrew school from the time that he was a little kid. So Jewish people, like no matter what country they live in, this guy lived in the United States, but Jewish families, like of the denomination of Judaism that he was associated with, sent their little kids to Hebrew school about the time they were learning English. So they are raised on Hebrew language, and in their homes, they read in this guy's home, their family read the Bible in Hebrew, and they did their devotions and their worship in Hebrew. So he was probably in his mid-20s. So he probably had 20 years of experience with being taught Hebrew and reading Hebrew and speaking Hebrew and worshiping and praying in Hebrew and so forth. So he was very familiar with the Hebrew language. And one of the students asked if it was hard for him to learn all of these paradigms and stuff of the different verb stems, the nifal, the pl, the pual, hifel, hofal, and hitpael. And he'd never heard of them. Now, he may have at one time learned those verb stems in Hebrew school, but he was unfamiliar with them. So even after all those years of reading and kind of thinking in Hebrew and speaking Hebrew, he was not even familiar with these paradigms. And so that kind of told me that I probably shouldn't get too bogged down and spend a lot of time, trying to memorize these paradigms and so forth, because there are so many of them, and there are so many exceptions to the rules, and like different rules for different arrangements of letters and things like that. So that is why the remainder of after we get done with the lesson for today, the remainder of the 4-page outline is just these paradigms, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them, because I think the best way to learn what these different paradigms, the different verb stems mean, is to recognize them in the text of Scripture and let the context teach you about all the different kind of implications of the different forms of the Hebrew verbs. So let me go ahead and pull up the larger edition of what we'll be looking at tonight. Again, as I say, I think the call or the simple or basic stem should be first on the list, but we'll take a look at that when we get to that paradigm. The nifal is a passive version of the call. The call is almost always active voice. And when you see a nifal, and they're fairly easy to recognize in the text, that's just a passive version of that. So the active, the call, an example of that would be Bob kissed Marcia. Marcia's my wife, so it's okay for me to kiss her. That's the active. But if we said it, Marcia was kissed by Bob, then she would be passive in that interaction. And so the verb would be acting on the subject. In the active voice, the subject acts on the direct object. So that's the difference between call and nifal. Now, PL is an intensive type of action. And for the life of me, I've been reading, PL verbs for probably 30 years and studying Hebrew. And it's hard for me to tell the difference. So I guess a PL verb is more intensive than a basic, active or passive voice verb. By the way, all of the names of these stems are based on a root, pei, ayin, lamed. Pei, ayin, lamed is basically the Hebrew word for to do, or to work, or to produce something. I looked it up on one of my electronic Hebrew English dictionaries, and it said it means to fall. I've never heard that before, but I guess Pei Ayin Lamed can also mean to fall. The reason is because in every grammar book that I've ever looked at, the Pei Ayin Lamed is the most standard model for a verb, and I guess Pei Ayin Lamed was chosen because it just fits nicely and neatly with so many different examples of the word. One of the things we will notice about the nifal is that it takes the basic call root here, Pei Ayin Lamed, and adds a noon prefix to it. So the noon prefix, along with a hirek, is the best way to recognize these, and we'll point out the others as well. So nifal, that's how it's spelled, using that that three-letter root word pa'al. Okay, PL is intensive. And all this factative and denominative stuff, I don't know what that means, and I don't care what that means. So we will go on to the top of the second column and continue these different verb stems. This top sentence or two, iterative, is another example of the PL. That we won't pay much attention to. The pu'al sounds a lot like PL, only this is the passive counterpart to the PL stem. So I have, in the readings that we have done, I have repeatedly tried to point out that when you see a U sound vowel in a word, that is often an indication that it will be passive. In whatever stem you're talking about, the shurek or the kibbutz, like we see here, the U sound, is an indication that it is that it's passive, and sometimes that'll help us interpret how the word is being used in a sentence. Now we've got hifil here. So instead of adding a noon to the as a prefix to the word, a hey, the H sound with hirek is added to the front. And that is one good way to recognize hifils. The other characteristic is usually in the middle of the word, there is a hirek yod that's added in. So here in the basic form of pu'al or PL, there is no hirek yod, but for this hifil, the hirek yod is added in. And hifil is causative. So in other words, if like a basic sentence would be Bob walked. If it's hifil, it would be something caused Bob to walk, or Bob caused something to be done. So you can just kind of throw in that word cause as kind of a helping verb or a helping word to help translate the sentence. So the hifil is causative, something caused the action to be done. And then again, we have simple action, declarative, factative, and I don't know and I don't care. So we'll move on to the next one, which is hofal. And this is the passive counterpart of the hifil. So if hifil is active voice, the hofal is passive voice. Now, this is a case where I think we actually have a kametz here. The reason it's called hofal, and I think we've come across this occasionally, is in a word like this, if you have a kametz under the first consonant in the first syllable of a word, followed by a shva, which is probably not going to be pronounced in a closed syllable like this. And this syllable, this first syllable, is not accented. It doesn't get the emphasis in the pronunciation. Then this comates is often lengthened and becomes a long O sound. So this is pronounced hofal. And I know, we learned that a comates is like a soft A sound. But in this arrangement where you've got comets followed by schwa and it's not accented, this becomes a long O sound. So it's ho fall. And there's no U sound. There is no shurek and there's no kivutz here, and yet it's passive. So the shurek, the U sound is not absolute. It's not passive in every case. And I guess I should say the other way around too. Sometimes there will not be a U sound and it'll still be a passive idea. So this is something that was caused. The word here is malik, which would be to what? To rule or to be like to become a king. And Himalik is he was caused to be king, or he made someone to be king. And then the Hufal, I'm sorry, the Hofal version that we're studying here is he was made king. So you can see how it's passive. The subject did not do the king making, but the subject was made king. The verb was acting on him. Okay, the last one then is hit pael. And instead of just adding one consonant as a prefix, this adds two, and it's hit. We've got hey, hirek, tav, and the shva. So it's hit pael, same root word, but it is it's an intensive action with a reflexive voice. Reflective is not exactly active or passive, but it is where the subject acts upon himself. So, for example, Kadash means he was holy, and in the Hit Pael, Hit Kadesh becomes he sanctified himself. Well, how would he have done that? He could have done that by asking God for forgiveness for his sins. He might have done that with a ceremonial washing, like in the Levitical priesthood or in baptism or immersion in the New Covenant. So it's the subject kind of acts upon himself, or he acts in his own interest. It's sometimes called reciprocal action. Okay, let's go down to this one paradigm that we are going to look at. Let me shrink this down just, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Let me bring it back up again. Okay, that's much better. So we're looking at the call paradigm, and I want to point out a few things. These are all of the what did we call those? Oh, those were the conjugations. We've got the perfect, which means completed action, the imperfect, which means continuous action or ongoing action. Imperative, you'll remember, is a command form. Then we have active and passive participles. PTC is an abbreviation for participle. And then we have the infinitives, which means like, to do something or to cause something. So let's look at each one of these, and we'll look at the form. We'll look at the part in red. And one of the things that I want to point out, and our model verb here, it's not pual anymore, but it is the verb katal, kuf, tate, and lamed. And I'm sure this verb was chosen for the same reason that pa'al was chosen, because it fits so neatly into the paradigms. But it's kind of a bizarre word to choose. Katal means to slaughter, as in a sacrifice. So it's like to put to death, to put someone or something to death. So we have in the perfect, the basic kal active verb. Of course, we've got third masculine singular, he did something. Third feminine singular, she did something. Second masculine singular, you singular did something. You, a man, did something. Second feminine singular, speaking of a woman, did something. Then we've got the first common singular, that's first person, that's something that I did, whether male or female. Then we've got the third person common plural, not based on gender because it's common. So what third person would be they. Then we've got the second person masculine plural, second person feminine plural, and first person common. First person is I, and it's common because gender doesn't affect it. So one of the things I want you to notice is that in the call form, in the basic form, no prefixes are added to this root, katal. All of the variations, depending on gender, number, and gender, number, and person, are all suffixes. The comets hey on the third person feminine singular, she, makes sense because the comets hey ending is feminine with nouns and so forth. Then we have a bunch of tavs as suffixes, and a few variations. Even down in the plurals, we have a couple of tavs added. And then for the third person common plural, we've got the shurek ending, and for the first person common ending, plural ending, the we ending, it's noon, shurek, or new, the new sound. But for the perfects, notice that most of the changes take place as suffixes. And the more familiar we get with these and the more we see them in the text, the more we'll be able to sort these suffixes out. So if you see a noun if you see a verb and it's got a suffix, it's probably a perfect. If you see a verb and it's got a prefix, like all of these do, it's probably imperfect, which means continuous or ongoing action. And there are a variety of these. Again, we've got all the different persons, we've got the gender, number, and person. And so there are a variety of these. Again, the tav is often associated with second person, so keep that in mind. It's also a feminine imperfect prefix. So in a lot of Hebrew verbs, if you see a yod prefix, it's probably a man speaking. If you see a tav prefix, it's probably a woman speaking. If you see an aleph prefix, it's probably me speaking, the first person singular speaking. Here we've got a yod, that's probably masculine. Here we've got a tav prefix, that's probably feminine, that one is. Here we've got a second person masculine plural, and it's tav anyway, but there's a suffix added to. So that's how you kind of tell that the tav in this case means masculine. Again, tav with a suffix, noon a prefix with no suffix. So those are the paradigms. They're very common. You'll find them in the text all the time. I'll try to point them out today as we go through them. For the imperative, the command, sense. It's kind of hard to distinguish between a ordinary like indicative verb and an imperative verb, but the context will make that much easier. And a few of these imperatives, the command form, have these suffixes as well. And again, they're so similar to some of these other ones that if I were to ask you to try to sort these out and memorize all these different prefixes and suffixes, that would be too much to ask. So again, let's let the context be our guide. Then we have participles and we have infinitives. And the thing I want to point out here is, again, sometimes it's hard to sort these out, but if you see a lot of participles and a lot of infinitives happen in the third person singular. So if you see a holum sere, and that would be pronounced cotail, cotail, and the same vowels with any arrangement of three-letter root words. The OA sound is a hint that it's a participle. There will be participles with other sounds too, but if you see OA, it's kind of a dead giveaway. And then for the infinitives, the idea of to do something, if you have a schwa holum, so this is katol, participle, cotail, infinitive, katol, and that's a good way to recognize those. This one is the absolute is similar sounding, but it's got a kamates instead of a schwa, and it's got the holum vav instead of just a holum by itself. So that's what one of the paradigms look like. It's the most basic one, the most simple one, the one we'll come across most often. And I think that's about all you need to know about it. So you can fold up your four-page study guide and kind of keep it handy in case you need to look something up. If you ever want to refer to any of these paradigms, good luck, but you've got all the paradigms there. I think every paradigm that you'll probably ever come across in reading the Bible, and you can look at the different forms and things like that. So you have that available to you. So without spending any more time on grammar, let's go ahead to our text for today. We'll be in Genesis chapter 5. Again, this is the Accordance Bible software, and in the left column, we'll be looking at the Hebrew Bible with all the study aids and things like that, which will be very helpful for us today. And Genesis chapter 5, did I say Hebrews 5? I meant Genesis 5. We're in Genesis 5 today. Most of this, in fact, all of this chapter is a genealogy. And normally, like in devotional reading, the Bible is just full of genealogies. I usually tell my students, if you come to a genealogy, just skip over it, unless you want to have practice reading Hebrew names. And that will be good practice for us, good pronunciation practice. So the English version that I've got today is the New King James Version, which uses English versions of all the the names that we have there in the Bible. So you can see what the English version of these names look like, and you can hear and see how they are written and pronounced in Hebrew. So that will be helpful for us. I will take some time in the first several verses to look at verb forms, because there's one very important thing that you will see in these first several, actually you'll see it all through this chapter, a grammatical point, and I will point that out when we come to it. So Genesis 5 verse 1, ze, this, sefer, is it's a noun. So in noun form, it means a book or a writing. In verb form, it means to report or to write, but it also has a noun form. So this is the noun form for a book. This is a book, toledot. This toledot means genealogy, a genealogy or a family tree, toledot. And toledot is a common word in the Old Testament because the Old Testament is full of genealogies. We've already come across this word once when I believe it's right at the beginning of Genesis chapter 2. It talks about the generations of the heavens and the earth. It talks about that right after the sixth or seventh day of the, 6 days of the creation or restoration of the earth to a habitable state. So we've already encountered toledot. It is related to the word yeled, yud, lamed, dalet. That's the Hebrew word for giving birth. And genealogies are all about being born and dying. So toledot is a good Hebrew word to talk about family trees or genealogies. So this is a book of the genealogy of Adam. Adam is the name of the first man. The Hebrew word for man is Adam, and the Hebrew word for his name is Adam. So we can be talking about mankind, or we can be talking about a generic male individual, or we can be talking about one guy whose name is Adam. And in this case, we're talking probably primarily about Adam, but also it's the genealogy of mankind from the first for the first man Adam, and throughout his generations up until the hero of the next section of the Bible, who is Noah. So we'll see his genealogy to that degree, to that length. So this is the book of the genealogy of Adam, Bayom, in the day, bara, created, third person, I'm sorry, this is an infinitive construct. Baro, Elohim, the creation of God. So we've got there's the telltale verb arrangement of an infinitive. So it's an infinitive construct. Bro, to create, Elohim. Why the infinitive is used there rather than the regular indicative form of that verb, I can't tell you. That's kind of God's choice, I guess. So in the day that God created Adam, created him. Bedamut, in damut, the image, or actually the likeness is a better translation of this. Elohim. So Adam was made in the likeness of God. Asa, he made. Oto is him. He made Adam. God made Adam. Okay, verse 2. Zakar is the Hebrew word for a male. It's like male gender. Zakar, like the root meaning, the basic meaning of zakar is to remember or be memorable. So the male of the two genders is memorable. U and nakeva. Nakeva is the Hebrew word for female, but again, the root word nakav, actually it's nakeva, I believe, means to be pierced. And we came across this before in the creation story, the Garden of Eden story of Adam and Eve. And just kind of alluded to the fact that the female, because of the anatomy that God gave her, is the one who is pierced, I guess you could say, by her husband. So he is memorable, and she is the pierced one. Bara'am, and here this is a kal verb. The three-letter root word is bara, beit, resh, aleph, means to create, and remember it means to create from nothing. But here we have a suffix that's added on, a kametz hey, which is a shortened form of the Hebrew word otam, and that is spelled with an aleph, tav, and a mem. So another way we could say this would be bara otam. And what Hebrew does is it just drops out the aleph and the tav from the word otam and adds the final form of the mem onto the end of a word. And so you get kind of a condensed version of bara otam. Instead, you say bara'am. So they were created. This kametz mem is not a verbal suffix. It's kind of an abbreviation of we might call it a hyphenated word, or a kind of a compound idea. Two words being blended together. Va and yivarech, barech is the Hebrew word for to bless. This is, if you look at the information window down at the bottom, you'll see that it's a third person singular, which means he blessed. But this is PL. And remember, PL is intensive. We learned that in the grammar lesson today. The PL verb stem is intensive. So I guess you could say God gave them a really intense blessing, which is kind of cool. But grammatically, it's really hard to tell the difference between a kal and a PL. But since it's PL, it's just a reminder to us that this is an intensive act of God. And so God, blessed otam, them. I mentioned before that this suffix added onto bara is just an abbreviated form of otam. So I guess we could have added just kametz mem to the end of barak and done the same thing. But here both words are spelled out. Va and yikara, he called. Look at the information window down at the bottom. This is a kal verb stem, the simple stem. It's third person, masculine, singular. But the interesting thing is, notice that the three-letter root word, kara, which means to call, has a prefix. So because it has a prefix, we would naturally come to the conclusion that it is a imperfect verb, meaning it's ongoing action. It's not a completed action, a perfect, but it is an incomplete action. Now, here's the trick. And this is going to sound really bizarre and like an exception to the rule, but it is one of the most common things that you come across all the time in Hebrew. And that is that in a sentence, or we're going to find it throughout this whole chapter of Genesis chapter 5. If you start the sentence with a perfect verb, so let's go back to the beginning here. Where is our verb? Adam, bara. That's an infinitive construct. Adam, bidmut, Elohim, asa. So we've got a call, third person, masculine, singular. That is it's a call perfect, so it's completed action. And even though this symbol here that looks like a colon in English, it's like a period in English. So that is the end of the sentence. And the sentence goes on. until we come to in verse 2, until we come to va yikara, and there it looks like the tense of the verb has changed to an imperfect. And this is the imperfect form of the verb. But when that imperfect form of the verb has a vav in front of it, then the form changes. The form of the idea of a perfect verb changes to an imperfect. But the translation of this, the meaning of this, is a perfect sense. He called, not he was calling ongoing action, but he called, as if this was a perfect. This is an example of something called a vav consecutive. So in Hebrew sentences, you can, and usually the order is that you have the first verb of a sentence or a phrase or even a whole chapter. If it is perfect, that's an indication that everything that comes after is going to be perfect. It's going to be completed action. But almost every verb that we will encounter in the rest of this translation is written as if it was an imperfect. But the meaning is perfect. The meaning is the opposite. So when you've got a vav consecutive, it means stick with the original verb sense. If the original verb sense was completed action, then stick with completed action, even though the form of these verbs throughout is going to be imperfect, is going to be a continuing action. Now, if we come across another verb without a vav, and that's imperfect, then that's going to be an indication that the tense of the verb or the action of the verb, whether continuous or completed action, is going to change. Now, I know that's, as I explained that just sounded confusing to me, but it's something you just get used to. You see it all the time. And that is why, that is the main reason why we don't let the form of verbs, like you see in a paradigm, determine whether it's completed action or ongoing action. Completed and ongoing is significant, and it helps us to determine what the text itself is saying. But the best way, and I'm going to say this a million times in Hebrew school, the best way to determine the tense of a verb is the context. And since this genealogy is all in the past, like all of our verbs are going to have the idea of completed action, even though most of them are going to be in the imperfect form. So let the context be your guide. If the context tells you you're dealing about past stuff, it's either going to be completed action in the past or continuing action in the past. And just let the context determine that. The context in Hebrew determines so much stuff. So even though this is an imperfect form because it's vav consecutive, the meaning of it is completed action. So God called, not he was calling, but he called it, direct object indicator, shamam. Shem is the Hebrew word for name. Again, if we add a comma's hey to the end of it, it's the same thing as saying Shem Otam, like the name of them. So we just drop out the aleph tav and tack the name with its commas onto the end. So shamam is their names, or actually their name. The name of Adam and Eve, the name of the man and the woman. So God called Shamam, their name, Adam. Their name, Adam. So the male and the female are called man. Now, in the New King James Version, that word Adam is translated not with man, but mankind. And that's a good translation, because it emphasizes that we are talking about the names of the male and the female. So we're talking about both male and female being called man, literally Adam, man. But the meaning of that is mankind. It's not a reference to the gender of the male. So God called both of them, male and female, he called them Adam. But in Yom, the day, Hivra'am. If you look down at the bottom, you can see this is an infinitive construct. The root is bara, created. So beit, resh, aleph, to create. And remember, this means to create from nothing. You will notice that the hey with hirik is one of the forms of an infinitive. In the day, to create, bara am, and again we have the comets meme on the end, so that's another way of saying bara otam, created them, but the aleph and the tav drop out and the am ending is tacked on to the end there. So I don't want to get too bogged down with this, but let's continue on with verse 3. Va and yehi. This is not yehi, which means it was. It means he lived. Chai is actually chaya is the three-letter root for to live. So va yachi, and he lived. Who lived? Adam. And again, this is the guy's name. It's not talking about the man and the woman, but it's talking about the singular person, Adam. So Vayachi Adam, Adam lived shloshim. Shalosh, Shin, Lamed, Shin, is the Hebrew word for three. But when you add the plural ending on here, shloshim, it goes from 3 to 30. So the plural ending added to a number means 30. Without the plural ending, it would be 3. So this is 30. So Adam lived 30, and ma'at. Ma'at is the Hebrew word for 100. So this combination means 130. Adam lived 130. Shana is the Hebrew word for years. This is a singular, so you'd think 130, it would be the plural of years, but this is the singular version, and that's just the standard Hebrew arrangement there. So when you see shloshim uma'at shana, you would not translate that with 130 year. You would translate it with 130 years. The context dictates that. So even the number of nouns doesn't necessarily tell you whether it's singular or plural. The and yoled. This is a hifil verb. Yolad means to beget, as if to have children. It doesn't say Adam gave birth to, because we know that's not right. We know Eve was the mom, so she's the one who gave birth, but the father can beget. And since this is all past tense, we translate it in the past tense. He begot rather than he beget. Yoled, he became the father of, he begot, he bore. That sounds more like a female. Ba in damuto. Damut is the Hebrew word for likeness. So God created Adam in his likeness, but when Adam had a kid, the kid was created in his likeness, the Holam Vav ending. Now the Holam Vav ending is a shortened form of Oto, Aleph, Tav, Holam Vav, Oto, and it means him. But again, just like in these other examples, we drop off the Aleph, Tav, and we add the Holam Vav, the surviving remnant of Oto, onto the end of this. So Adam gave birth to a son in Damuto, in his image, Adam's image. Ka, Tsalmo, like. Tselem is the Hebrew word for image. And again, the Holam Vav on the end is the shortened form of Oto, his image. Tselem is the Hebrew word for image. And let me emphasize that it is normally a visual image. It's not like a character similarity. It's not having similar features. It means that when God created Adam in his image, it means that Adam looked like God. He had the visual image of God. If you would go to Israel with me on a trip sometime and your camera would run out of film, I know cameras don't use film anymore, but for the purpose of this illustration, just be aware that cameras used to have film. If your camera ran out of film and you needed to buy some, we would go into a store and you would ask the shopkeeper for tselem, and he would give you film. Tselem is the word for film because cameras produce visual images. So when Adam gave birth to his son, that son was in his likeness, had similarities to Adam, but also in his image. The kid looked like Adam. And I mean, this happens all the time nowadays. If a couple gives birth to a child, people are always going, oh, he looks just like his dad, or oh, she looks just like her mom. Well, naturally. And it's a visual image that they're talking about. So if you want to know what God looks like, look in the mirror or look at, look at your a friend or look at your spouse. They were created in the image of God, the visual image of God. Va and yikra. This is a third person masculine singular call, basic verb in the imperfect form because it's got a yud prefix. But again, this is another example of a vav consecutive. It's one in a series of verbs that follows an initial verb and takes its tense, whether or not it's a completed or ongoing action, and takes its tense, past, present, or future, from the first verb. And these are all connected with a vav. If there wasn't a vav here, then I would say this is imperfect. It's ongoing action. Because the action is taking place in the past, I would say he was calling him. He was calling him. But since this is vav consecutive, I don't say he was calling him, but I say he called him, completed action. He named him once and that was it, completed action. And what did he call him? Et, direct object indicator, shmo, his name. Again, we have a noun that the root word, it's only a two-letter root, shem, the name, Oto, but this is a shortened form. I'm not going to keep bringing that up because it happens so often. How many times has it happened in this text already? And we're just at verse 3. So those suffixes, those add-ons are often abbreviated forms of, what did we call those? I can't remember. So what was his name? This has been a long sentence. What was the kid's name? What was Adam's son's name? It was Shate, or Seth in English. And it means to set in place or establish. That's what Shate means. Yeah, okay. let's continue on here. Verse 4. The Yehiyu he was not he lived, but he was. I guess I should say what? They were the days of Adam. Yeah, and they were. So this is masculine plural. This is masculine plural, and here's the masculine plural suffix ending of the verb to be chaya. Okay. Vayihiyu, and they were yameh. Yom is the Hebrew word for day. So this is um, a construct form. What did we call these? Construct chain. So the days of Adam, the guy, the one man, the individual Adam, the days of Adam, Ahare, after, holy dough, he caused to be born at Shet, after Adam caused to be born Shet. And notice that this is Hifil, so he caused him to be born. He wasn't just born, but he was caused to be born by the what? The laws of reproduction that God wove into the fabric of the universe. So after Adam caused Shet to be born at Shet, Shemone is the Hebrew word for 8. Meot, so it would be 800 shana. Again, we would think this would be years, plural, but it's shana, it's singular. So 800 years. Vayoled, and so is this, this is Hifil also. So, and he caused to be born. Banim, is the plural of ben. The im ending means the plural of ben. So sons, he caused to be born sons. And banot. Banot is the plural of daughters. Banot. And this is kind of weird because the root word for daughter is bat. But here, for some reason in Hebrew, and it's always this way, the tav drops out, the noon takes its place, and then the plural ending ot. So banot is not like feminine sons, but well, I guess in a way, it is. This is the typical word for daughters. So yeah, Adam had sons and daughters. And Adam was like 130 years old when he gave birth to Seth. He had given birth to, or caused to be born, Cain and Abel, and Cain killed Abel. So it wasn't until Adam was 130 years old that they had Seth. But he also had other sons and daughters. And let me tell you, Adam and Eve can have lots of sons and daughters in 130 years. And so this is where the population of the earth came from. So Adam and Eve are having all these kids, but all their kids are having kids. And the bigger the family tree gets, the more the earth becomes populated with sons and daughters. And yes, of course, brothers and sisters married each other and near relatives married each other. But incest, as we would call it today, was not so much of a problem back in the Earth's earliest ages, because sin had not run so rampant and caused birth defects and things like that, which is why we're not supposed to marry near relatives in our day and age. Okay, verse 5. Let's see. Va yihiyu, and were, and they were, call all Yameh, the days of Adam, Asher, which, Chai, he lived, third person masculine singular, he lived. Tesha is the Hebrew word for 9, Meot, 900, Shana, again, we would think it would be plural, but it's not. And Shloshim, this shalosh is 3, shloshim is 30, shana, years, ve, yamot, and he died. So again, this is a vav consecutive, so the prefix here has an imperfect grammar, but a perfect completed action meaning. So when Adam died, he only did it once. It wasn't a continuous action. I mean, when you die, the dying is done. So we know it's a completed action. One thing I want to say before we go any further, we've got Adam living 930 years. And as we continue through the genealogy, one of the things that we will just be amazed by and staggered by is the longevity, the lifespans of all these people. And it wasn't just an odd person here and there who lived hundreds, close to 1,000 years. All of them are living 700, 800, 900 or more years. And there are a lot of different explanations for that. Basically, science says that's nonsense, and the Bible is just wrong about the lifespans of these people. That's modern day science. It's not legitimate science, but it's a skeptical science, and it just says the Bible's wrong. Nobody can live that long. Other people, come up with other explanations about the environment of the earth being way different before the flood of Noah's Ark. And so they say, because the conditions were different, and again, sin hadn't run as rampant and wreaked as much havoc on the human race as in later times. People lived those very long lifespans. When we were in earlier chapters of Genesis and we talked about the waters above the firmament or the sky and the waters below, which would be the oceans and rivers and lakes and such, we talked about one of the ways that scientifically, legitimate in a legitimate sense, scientifically, that there could have been waters up above the atmosphere that surrounds the earth, is if the earth was rotating a lot faster than it is now. Maybe twice as fast, maybe 5 times as fast, maybe 10 times as fast. And if time was measured by rotations of the earth, periods of day and night, a person could count the number of days and nights that he would have, and that's the way he would calculate his age. So we could say that the number of days and nights that Adam lived would in those days equal 930 years. But a person living now at the rate of rotation of the earth, which could be much slower than it was in Adam's day, might live a similar length of time, but many fewer days and nights would be counted in a lifespan that might be of similar length. So what the Bible may be saying is that in the days of Adam, he lived a number of days and nights that would be calculated in those days to be 930 years. I might be living the same length as Adam, but the earth is going much slower, so I have much fewer days and nights in my lifetime. And skeptical science would say, "Oh, that's impossible. The rotation of the Earth can't change. It's always been the same." Oh, really? It'd be interesting to try to prove that. And I think as we continue reading through the Bible, there will be several places, even much later in history, where it may very well be that God just slowed down or speeded up the rotation of the earth. He made the earth rotate, so he can change the angular velocity of the earth. Well, that's neither here nor there. So I believe we are at verse 6 here. Let's continue. Vayachi, and he lived, Shet, Seth lived, Chamesh, 5, Shanim, 5 years, and Ma'at, 100 Shana years. So Seth lived 105 years, Va Yoled, and caused to be born at direct object indicator Enosh. His son's name was Enosh. Verse 7, Vayachi Shet Ahare, so he lived, Seth, Ahare, after, Holido, he caused the birth of him, of Enosh, at Enosh, Sheva, 7, Shanim, 7 years, Shmone, 800, Meot, Shana. So 807 years he lived. And Yoled, he caused to be born, Banim, sons, Ubanot, daughters. Verse 8, Vayahi, and they were, call, all, Yameh, days, Shet, of Shet, Shtaim, which is the Hebrew word for, well, it's actually the word for 2, but it's followed by Esrei. So Shtei Esrei is the Hebrew way of saying 2 and 10, or 12 years, Shana. Tesha, 9, Meot, 100, Shana. So he lived 912 years, Vayamot. He died, and he died. So, and again, this is a Vav consecutive, so even though Yamot appears to be imperfect, the sense is perfect. I think you get the idea, so we probably don't have to keep saying that. Seth didn't live quite as long as his dad. Verse 9, Vayachi, and he lived, Enosh, Seth's son, he lived, Teshaim, Tesha is 9, Teshaim is 90, Shana, he lived 90 years, Yoled, he caused to be born, direct object indicator, Canaan. Canaan was his son's name. Verse 10, Vayahi, and he lived, Enosh lived, Achare, after, Holido, after he caused to be born, Canaan, Chamesh, 5, Esrei, so 5 and 10, or 15 years, Shana, and Shmone, 8, Meot, 100, 800, Shana. And Yoled, he caused to be born, Banim, sons, Ubanot, daughters. Verse 11. And Yahi, and they were, Kol, all, Yameh, days, Enosh, all the days of Enosh, Chamesh is 5, Shanim, 5 years, Tesha, and 9, Meot, 100, Shana, years, 900, and what was that? 905 years. Vayamot, and he died. I wanted to tell you that was Vav consecutive again, but I'm going to quit doing that. Verse 12, Vayahi, and Vayahi, and he lived, Canaan, Shivaim, Sheva is 7, Shivaim is 70, Shana, years, Yoled, he caused to be born, direct object indicator, Mahalalel, Mahalalel is his son's name. I could probably quit saying direct object indicator too. I think you've probably got that down by now. Verse 13, Vayachi, and lived Canaan, Ahare, after Holido, he caused to be born, Et Mahalalel, Mahalalel was his son's name, Arbaim. Arba is the Hebrew word for four in the plural. Arbaim, it's 40 shana, years. U, and shmone, 8, meot, 800 shana. Va, Yoled, and he gave caused to be born, banim, sons. U, banot. Maybe we can start combining some words too, so the translation doesn't become so stuttery. Let's see if I can do that. Va, and Yehiyu, and they were Kol Yamei Canaan, all the days of Canaan, Eser Shanim, 10 years, Utesha Meot Shana, and 900 years. So what do we got? 910 years, Vayamot, and he died. Verse 15, Vayachi, and lived Mahalalel, that's his name, Chamesh Shanim, 5 years, and Shishim. Shishi is the Hebrew word for 6. Shishim is 60 shana. So what have we got here? 65 years. Va Yoled, and he caused to be born, Et Yared, Jared. But again, there's no J in Hebrew, so it's Yared. This is the name of the Jordan River, Yarden. It means to go down. So his name means to come down. We'll have more to say about that later at the end. Verse 16, Vayachi Mahalalel, and he lived Ahare Holido et Yered, after he caused to give birth to Jared, Yared. Shloshim Shana, 30 years, Ushmone Meot Shana, and 800 years, so 830 years. Vayoled, and he caused to be born, Banim u Banot, sons and daughters. Verse 17, Vayahiu, and they were, Kol Yamei Mahalalel, all the days of Mahalalel. And by the way, this is all the days of Mahalalel. It's sounding like he only lived 895 days, but days here is the this is kind of complicated. Sometimes days is used in kind of a figurative sense, meaning years. So I know, I wish if the Bible meant days, it would say days, but sometimes when it says days, sometimes it means years. Now that doesn't mean that the 6 days of creation were years or thousands of years or millions of years. The context there, indicates that those were legitimate days, and Exodus 20, the 10 commandments in the Sabbath commandment confirms that. So this is just one of those weird things about Hebrew that somebody who's been reading it for 30 years, so all the days of Mahalalel, I know that means years. And that's what comes afterwards here. So all the days of Mahalalel, Chamesh, 5, V'teshim, 95, Shana, years, Ushmone, Meot, Shana, and 800 years. So we've got 895 years, Vayamot, and he died. Verse 18, Vayachi Yered, and lived Jared, Shtaim, 2, and Shishim, 2 and 60, 62 years, Shana, Ma'at shana, and 100 years, vayoled, and he caused to be born, et Chanok. Chanok. In English, that's Enoch, but it's got a chet, first consonant, so it's Chanok. And in the Messianic Jewish translations that we look at sometimes, it is Hanok. It's called, his name is Hanok in Hebrew. So I don't know why the chet dropped out in English. English doesn't have a chet, I guess. Verse 19. Vayehi, and was Yared, Jared. Aha, I'm sorry, this is Yahi. See, English doesn't have a chet. So, and he lived, Jared lived, Ahare, Holido, et Hanok, after he caused to be born Hanok, Enoch, Shmone Meot, 800 Shana, Vayoled Banim Uvanot, and he caused to be born sons and daughters. Verse 20. Vayihiyu, and they were called Yamei Yared, all the days of Jared, Shtaim Ushishim Shana, 62 years, Utesha Meot Shana, and 900 years. So we got 962 years, Vayamot, and he died. Verse 21. Vayechi Chanok, and lived Enoch Chamesh v'shishim Shana. So 65 years, Vayoled, and he caused to be born at Mathushalach. Mathushalach, that's Methuselah. So Enoch's son was named Methuselah. Verse 22. Vayit Halek. So this is a we haven't seen this verb in this chapter. Halak means to walk or to go somewhere. So he walked. This is a hit pael, which we learned today means reflexive. So what this is saying is Enoch caused himself to walk. There's some discipline implied here. So he caused himself to walk. Hanok is the subject. Et ha-Elohim. Now here, the Aleph Tav is not a direct object indicator. It's got the little bridge here, the makef. I think that's a makef. Ha-Elohim, the God. So he caused himself to walk with the God. Ahare, after, Holido, he caused to be born at Mathushalach. Shalosh Meot, 300, Shana, Vayoled, and he caused to be born Banim Ubanot. Did I do the number here? He walked after Methuselah was born, Shalosh Meot, 300 years. Vayoled Banim Ubanot. Now, I would expect that the next verse, well, let's go ahead to the next verse, and I'll tell you what I expect. Vayehi, and he was, or they were, called Yamei Chanok, all the years of Hanok or Enoch, Chamesh v'shishim shana, 65 years, and shalosh meot shana, and 300 years. Now, I would expect that that this would this sentence would end with, and he died, but it doesn't say that. And he's the only character in here that the Bible doesn't say that he died at the end of his lifespan. And look how many years he lived. 365 years. Now that seems like a long time to us, but compared to all these other people in his genealogy, man, he was just a young whippersnapper. but it doesn't say that he died. Let's see if verse 24 helps us with this strange thing that the Bible is, what it's not saying. It's not saying more than it is saying. Verse 24, Vayithalek, again, this is hitpael, so it's reflexive. He caused himself to walk, Hanok, the subject, et ha-Elohim, with God, ve, and enenu, he was not. That's a weird thing to say. He walked with God, and then he wasn't. Very strange. Ki, because, lakach, he took, oto, him, Elohim. So Elohim is the subject. Elohim took him. And that was the reason, ki, he was not. Very interesting. Very interesting. Now, the New Testament helps us a little bit with this. Let me go to verse 25 here so I don't lose my place. And let's go to another Bible text here. Let me pop up Olive Tree Bible software. And here we're looking at Hebrews 11, verse 5, that just happens to be talking about our friend Hanok. By faith, Enoch was taken away. Genesis 5 says God took him. He was taken away so that he did not see death. So that's why it doesn't say in Genesis that he died, because he didn't. He didn't see death and was not found. In Genesis says he wasn't, because God had taken him. So God just took him. For before he was taken, he had this testimony that he pleased God. And then it goes on to say that without faith, it's impossible to please him, God. For he who comes to God must believe that he is, or he exists, and that he's a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. Now, Enoch caused himself to walk with God. So he disciplined his life so that he was walking in God's will. We might say that Enoch was walking in the light as God was in the light, and they had fellowship one with another. And the reward for this, for Enoch, was that he didn't die, that God just took him up to heaven, I suppose, to the Father's house with many mansions. And so it's a very interesting story. And wouldn't you love to have more detail of that story? Now, a lot of Bible scholars who believe in what is called the rapture, which means that before the great tribulation begins in the end times and before the Antichrist is revealed, a lot of us, I'm one of them, believes that God will just catch up to heaven all of the believers, all the people who believe in him, and leave the earth without any believers in Yeshua, without any believers in Jesus. And that may be one of the reasons that the Great Tribulation will be as awful as it is. Of course, the Antichrist is another reason. That event is called the rapture. And like many people who don't believe in the rapture say, look, the word rapture is not even in the Bible. So it's just a made up word for all those crazy people who believe they're going to be caught up in the clouds to meet Jesus in the air before the Great Tribulation starts. Well, in actuality, the word rapture was coined when the language of the day, the universal language, was Latin. And in 1 Thessalonians 4, I think it's 17, 1 Thessalonians 4:17, where that verse comes from, that, Christ will appear in the clouds, and the dead in Christ will be caught up to meet him in the air. And afterwards, we who are alive and remain will be transformed, will be changed and caught up together to meet in the air. So the living and the dead will be caught up, raptured, we say. The Greek word for that in 1 Thessalonians 4:17 is the word harpazo. But when that verse was translated into Latin for the church around the world spoke Latin in those days. The word that was used to translate harpazo was rapare, or the English version of that is rapture. So yes, in the Latin Bible, the word rapture is in 1 Thessalonians 4:17 and lots of other places. So it may be that Enoch, Hanok, is a kind of a prefiguring. He is a type or a kind of a representative of those who are going to be raptured before great destruction falls on the earth. Keep in mind where we are in Genesis. We're right before the flood. Noah is about to come on the scene. Of course, he's the guy that builds the boat. But before God's judgment fell, Enoch was caught up to heaven. He was raptured to heaven. So many of us believe that when the judgment of the Great Tribulation happens, that we hope, having caused ourselves to walk with God, we hope that we will be caught up into the heavens to meet Jesus and be gathered to him. And we will watch, hopefully, we will watch the Great Tribulation from our really good seats in heaven, in the Father's house with many mansions. Okay, let's continue on. Verse 25, but Yechi, and he lived, Methuselah, Sheva u Shemonim Shana. So this would be 87 years. Uma'at Shana, and 187 years. Vayoled, and he caused to be born at Lamech. Lamech was his son's name. 26, Vayechi, and lived, Methuselah lived, Achare Holido at Lemech, after he had caused to be born Lemech, Shtaim Ushmonim Shana, 280 years, or 82 years, Sheva Me'ot Shana, and 700 years. So we've got 782 years. Vayoled, and he caused to be born Banim Ubanot, sons and daughters. Verse 27, Yihiyu, and they were called Yameh, all the days of Methuselah, Tesha, 9, Veshishim, 60, Shana, 69 years, Vatesha Me'ot Shana, and 900 years, Vayamot. So Methuselah lived to be 969 years, and I believe that's the longest lifespan that the Bible talks about. I suppose it's possible that other people lived longer, and the Bible doesn't say anything about them. But as far as recorded lifespans go, Methuselah wins the prize. Verse 28, Vayechi Lemech, and lived Lemech, Shataim Ushmonim Shana, 82 years, and Uma'at Shana, and 100 years, Vayoled, and caused to be born Ben, a son. Vayikra, and he called at Shemo, his name, Noach. That's Noah. Noach in Hebrew. Noach means to rest or to be comforted or to provide comfort or rest for others. Lemor, like saying. This is a infinitive construct with the lamed prefix. So we've got an infinitive construct. So we've got the lamed, which is a clue that we're dealing with an infinitive. So saying, or to say, zeh, this. Yanacha, let me start over. Yanach menu. This word Nacham is related to Noach's name, and you can see down at the bottom, it means comfort, relent, or give rest is another definition. So the new ending is first person common plural. That would be us. So when, who was the dad here? Lamech gave birth to Noah, Lamech said, this person will give us rest. This person will give us rest. Mima'asenu, from the work of us. The new ending is us. And may itzvon. Itzvon is kind of like work, ma'aseh, only it's hurtful work, I guess. The toil is the way it comes across in English. And from the toil, yadenu. Yad is hand. Yadenu is our hands, the work of our hands. Min, from ha'adamah. The Adamah is like the soil of the ground. So Lamech was probably a farmer who worked the soil and really toiled and labored. And he's saying, this son of mine is going to give us all rest from our work. And in a sense, in a way, that's a true prediction. Asher, which, Era'ah, arar is a curse, and here we have Yahweh's name, or the Lord's name. So he's what's he saying about his son? This kid Noah is going to give us rest and comfort from the work and toil of our hands from the earth, because we work the earth, which the earth has been cursed by Yahweh. Vayehi, and Vayehi, and he lived. Lamech lived. Achare holido et Noach, after he had caused to be born Noach. Chamesh v'tish'im shana, 95 years. Ve'chamesh meot shana, and 500 years. So what is this? 595 years. Vayoled, and he caused to be born banim ubanot, sons and daughters. We're almost to the end. Vayehi, and it was, kol yamei Lamech, all the days of Lamech, Sheva ve'shivaim shana, 77 years. Here's the 70, here's the singular, 7. Sheva me'ot. So we got 777 years. Shana vayamot, and he died. Verse 32. Vayehi, and it was Noach, or he was. Noach was ben chamesh me'ot shana. What it literally says here is that Noah was a son of 500 years. So he was a son of 500 years. That's how you say he was 500 years old in Hebrew. So Abraham was a son of 75 years when God called him. So very common. He was a son of Chamesh Me'ot Shana, 500 years. Vayoled, and he caused to be born. Noach caused to be born. Et, direct object indicator. Shem, et Noach caused to be born. Et Shem, et Cham, et Yafet. Those are the 3 sons of Noah. And it doesn't mean that all 3 were born the same year when Noah was 500 years old. It may mean that the first one was born and then the next one 9 months later, or maybe they were triplets, like who knows. The Bible does refer to Ham, I believe, as the youngest son of Noah, but he could be the youngest of triplets. I mean, even when you have twins or triplets, the older one is the one who comes out first because he's a few minutes older. Okay, so here we have Noah is the last in the genealogy. We're ready for chapter 6. Noah's the last in this genealogy that started with Adam. And the genealogy actually ends with his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And you might be interested to know that you already know the word Shem. It means name. It can also mean fame. Et Cham is the Hebrew word for heat, and Et Japhet is the Hebrew word for beautiful. So Noah named his sons famous, hot, and beautiful. Very interesting. Those are legitimately what those names mean. So we are about to end, but I want to share one more thing with you. Some Bible scholars talk about hidden meanings in the text of Scripture. So I want to share with you an example of that. A number of years ago, it's probably been 20 years ago, the Bible codes were very popular. And you could buy best-selling books about the Bible codes. And what they usually did was that they treated the text of the Bible. It was almost always the Hebrew Old Testament, like a word search. And they would find secret messages in taking every 10th word or every 50th word or every 24th word or a letter. Like, you would count off 50 letters and like write down the letter, and every 50 letters, then if you put all those letters together, they would spell stuff. And when I was going through seminary back between 1983 and 1987, Bible codes were very popular. And one of my Hebrew profs pointed out the fact that if you go to the book of Genesis, the very first verse of the Bible, and you find the first yod, and count off 50 letters from there, the next letter is going to be a hey. 50 letters from that is going to be a vav, and 50 letters from that is going to be a hey. Then if you count 50 letters from that, the next letter is yod, 50 letters from that is a hey, 50 letters from that is a vav, and 50 letters from that is a hey. So it keeps spelling Yahweh, 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 as long as you are willing to count out 50 letters. And so I did that for a pretty long time, maybe close to an hour, and it works. And every 50th letter, starting with the first yod, is Yahweh, or the Lord, or Hashem, Adonai, however you want to say it. It spells out Yud He Vav He over and over and over again. And my Hebrew prof said, if you keep going, like for the rest of your life, you'll find that it keeps going. It keeps going that way. So I gave it a little bit of a try. But one of the things that taught me was I kind of poo-pooed and didn't give much credence to the Bible codes until I learned that. And then I thought, well, maybe there is something to it. Now, I personally don't want to spend the rest of my life counting out equidistant letter sequences in the text. I just want to read it for the surface value. But for those who are interested in the secret things, the hidden messages, they are there. They are there, and you can find out some very interesting things by searching out the Bible codes. That's not my thing, but people do it, and they find a lot of things there. There is all kinds of hidden structure in the Bible, Old Testament and New. You may have heard already that numbers are very significant in the Bible. Like 7 is the number of perfection, 4 is the number of a man, 6 falls short of perfection. So it's like, the number of man, and 12 is the number of disciples and the number of tribes. So all these numbers and stuff are significant. None of that is there by accident. So not only is the surface text of the Bible amazing, but there are some hidden meanings as well. In Hebrew, like rabbis talk about 4 levels of biblical interpretation. And there's an acronym, so you can remember what it is. The acronym is PRDS, or Pei, Resh, Dalit, and Samek. And those letters stand for Peshat, which is just the surface meaning of the text. And that's what I'm most interested in, is the Peshat. Then you got the Remez, which is the Hebrew word for a hint. And that is, it's not stuff that the Bible says directly, but it hints at. Then you've got drash or midrash. You've probably heard of midrash before, which is deep study of the Bible, especially with application, practical application of the text of Scripture. And then you've got the sod, and that would be spelled S-O-D, which means hidden things, like Bible codes and like number sequences and like, well, all kinds of this kind of below the surface stuff. So let me share with you what I wanted to share with you, just as an example of this. We are going to take the Hebrew names in Genesis chapter 5 that we just spent a lot of time reading all the names. It's just the genealogy from Adam to Noah. And I think you might find an interesting message there. Adam means man. You probably already knew that. Shet means to be established or to become. Enosh means like to be mortal. It's kind of talking about a mortal, a mortal man. Kind of the weak nature of man. Canaan means a dwelling place. Mahalalel means that God is worthy of praise. Yared means to come down. Chanok means to teach. Enoch means to teach. Methushalah is kind of a long name. What it literally means is he will die when it comes. Or actually, when it is sent. So when it is sent, he will die. Lamech means, it's talking about powerful, usually in a negative sense, like a strong or harsh judgment. And then Noach means comfort or rest. So let's put them all together and see if there's a hidden meaning. Starting with Adam, if we put all the names together, it means man becomes a mortal. Dwelling, sort of like dwelling in a mortal body. The praiseworthy God comes down to teach that at his Methuselah's death, the flood of Noah, will come for powerful judgment, I'll add. But God provides through Noah comfort and rest. So is that cool or what? Now, you may say I'm kind of manipulating the, the definitions of the meanings of those names, but I don't think so. I think this is an example of a sod, a hidden meaning. So all those seemingly meaningless names that we read in Genesis chapter 5 may have some significant meaning after all. Okay, I think I have kept you long enough. Let me sign off here with the blessing. We'll just do it in English tonight. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you with favor and give you peace. Shalom, and hope to see you next time. Even though we're done with the grammar, we're not through with Hebrew school. So see you next time.